Good day. Today is Saturday, the 14th of June 2025. And today the format is slightly different because I was editing all day. I did not have time yesterday to post a video on time. Apologies for that. Today I posted two videos which are going to be online now, and this is the one that will come tomorrow. This should be the one that will come tomorrow. And as promised, today we shall be covering, start covering the case studies that London Psychometric Laboratory has developed and released over during this year. So the first case study that we're going to look at is a leadership excellence. Okay, so unlocking leadership at Thames Valley Police. So in this case study, we showcase how Thames Valley Police, one of UK's largest leadership police forces, transformed their approach to developing exceptional leaders, and that is of vital importance because change the way they train their staff and how do they identify specific uh, recruits who have exceptional leadership qualities and how do they nurture them into leaders, into not just good leaders but truly inspirational leaders, right? So the idea is to understand what kind of methodology did one of the largest UK police forces use to transform a skill-based and like traditional leadership development approach into an approach that creates truly inspirational leaders. Thames Valley Police had a generic problem that most organizations face, like the leadership issue. But with policing, it's vital to sort out that issue because the stakes are literally life and death. They had sergeants and senior staff who understood procedures, had experience, and they were perfect, exceptional candidates on paper. But in practice, when it came down to practical application of those skills, the results were wildly inconsistent. So how did they improve this consistency and how did they solve this leadership crisis? Some officers were exceptional leaders by nature, so they did not need any training and they just intuitively were able to manage and leverage the best out of their underlings and were able to guide and execute tasks efficiently. However, people with similar profiles, like practical backgrounds and similar experience, they were not as effective leaders as the natural born leader. So that was the issue. How can you transfer these natural leadership skills and can you actually cultivate them in anyone? Look, can you transform the people with great CVs, right? People with great qualifications, people with great backgrounds, and equip them with the necessary skills to be able to lead as effectively as naturally born leaders. So what they did, instead of just relying on standard leadership training courses, they employed a strategy called precision development. In order to achieve impactful leadership training, what they needed to do first is understand how the potential leadership candidate, like potential promotion candidate, is thinking. Like, what are their priorities? How do they, like, how would they approach leadership situations, and where are the areas that they might be lacking in, right? So the first thing that they do is assess the candidates based on the DISC and TQ. The actual structure of the program would be changed and adapted based on each individual officer's leadership needs, right? Leadership development needs. So they would tailor and help cultivate the leadership strategies that have been proven to work within those specific profiles and help nurture the expressions of those leadership qualities that best suit each potential officer. So they created this structured program, which was called Developing Potential Cohorts, which is a 2-year intensive leadership course that is built around the specific needs of the candidate. One-on-one coaching, customized development plans targeting specific growth areas, uh, uh, customized development plans targeting specific growth areas, and ongoing reassessments through both instruments to ensure that to track and measure the progress that's being made by the candidates. To track and measure progress that's being made by the candidates, right? So what was identified through this leadership program was that identical disc profiles identical disc profiles, so identical behavioral tendency profiles, right? So how people evaluate how they behave, right? Uh, had wildly different leadership outcomes based on their trait emotional intelligence results. Trait emotional intelligence results. So the way they actually expressed. So high dominance officers, right? So their natural like behavioral style, right? It needs to be augmented with specific techniques that can be derived from applying trait emotional intelligence and cultivating the necessary skills to be able to transform like ineffectual leadership into effective leadership that can truly inspire the team and the force. Some specific examples of the varying application of DISC and TQ results in specifically leadership application is as follows. Key facets that were responsible for creating beneficial leadership outcomes were the following: empathy, self-control, and emotion management. High expressions in those traits while having the high dominance behavioral style resulted in inspirational leadership. Their teams respected them, followed them, and achieved exceptional results. They could be firm when necessary, but also supportive and understanding. Another group is high dominance while having low trait emotional intelligence, low empathy, low self control, and low emotion management. So, officers who lack these emotional intelligence competencies were significantly less successful than their high emotional intelligence competency colleagues. This resulted in resistance and disengagement. Their teams complied out of fear of punishment rather than being inspired to follow commands willingly. And this resulted in high turnover rate and low morale in those teams. So the interesting bit was the same tendency to express a specific behavior, but the way how they express that behavior changed dramatically, and that deciding factor was trait emotional intelligence. So trait emotional intelligence predicted and showed what the different outcomes resulted. The application of specific traits of your profile and having them expressed in a certain way achieves different leadership outcomes. And out like based on those results and those observations, tailored development programs were created to achieve the desired effects in the officers. 3 programs were created in total: the developing the developing potential cohort, women in police cohort, and sergeants and inspectors cohort. So based on those observations, specific coaching patterns, like targeted development programs, and ongoing reassessment to track this progress and track the shift in your own self-expression and self-assessment, right? The outcome of the coaching was not that they were trying to change who the officers were and changing the behavior, but equipping them with the understanding and new tools to express their natural behavioral style in an effective way. So it's cultivating the cultivating the new level of understanding. So similar to how, so like, in the previous video that we discussed, like the idea of these circles. So removing these circles that are blocking your way, like the way that you've sort of originally expect to present yourself, right? And showing you what can lie beyond, like how can you express, how can you express yourself in an effective way that has been before unseen, right? That has been before unseen. So trying to shift that self-limitation, self-imposed limitation on your expression of who you are, like on your behavioral tendency, right? The manner in which you express, the manner in which you express your natural behavior style. So the outcomes were as follows. 36 officers were participating in a cohort. They completed their 2-year leadership development journey. After the completion of this journey, more than 15 new coaches were trained to create a leadership academy and develop these and continue working on these programs in an expanded way. So some universal principles that were gathered out of this exercise. So the natural behavior style is just the starting point of your journey, right? So you need to cultivate your emotional intelligence and understand how to apply it properly to fuel, to sort of not cushion, but to impact to create appropriate, like an effective, to create an appropriate impact for your action. What you're trying to achieve is create teams with inspired people who are happy to work and are willing to follow orders out of respect and admiration rather than fear, right? So you do not want to create dysfunction within your teams. Another principle is that generic leadership courses don't work. So each person needs to be developed according to their behavioral style and their emotional competency, right? So some people have, like, people have varying behavioral styles, so the emotional competencies that are needed to be developed are different, because those the emotional competencies that are responsible for successful leadership application are different depending on how and with what approach you're behaving. Another principle is that you don't try to change someone's personality and behavior. You're not trying to actually change who the person is. You're just simply trying to equip them with the skills necessary to work with on the challenges that are presented before them. Leadership development does not happen in a day. It's a sustained journey that needs continuous effort and continuous work. So it's a cultivation of a skill. It's a skill that needs to be trained and taught rather than developed in one day. The final principle is that you have to measure the outcomes. So you have to measure not just the leadership outcomes and whether or not the orders were successful, you also need to measure whether or not the execution was done in a sustainable manner. So what is the psychological impact on the team that is doing the work? So you have to measure results and the relationship and the psychological drain, whether the orders were executed or the team is following out of fear in order not to burn them out, right? So people are more reluctant to follow you, and it's more psychologically difficult for them to follow you if they do not believe in your competency, right? If you cannot inspire them properly, it will exhaust and drain them rather than fuel them with ambition and desire to succeed, right? So I hope that you enjoyed this segment. Like today I posted 2 videos at once to sort of cover for that and sort of catch up to the daily release schedule that I'm trying to maintain. So I would like to hear your thoughts on this. Please post them in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, and please go to the website and buy our stuff.